join. I imagine a few more people will come online as well, but that's fine. We might as well kick it off this morning. So welcome everybody. My name is Martin Mattico. I'm a Group Manager for WA Operations and I'm chairing this morning's meeting. So welcome everybody. People should have received the slide pack before. We do actually now include just a reminder of competition law. Just so I won't read that out for everybody, but please just be aware that there is actually some governance around that. So read that on your own time. And acknowledgement to country. We welcome the traditional custodians of the land, seas and waters across Australia. We honour the wisdom of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders, past, present, and embracing future generations. We acknowledge that wherever we work, we do so on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island lands. We pay respect to the world's oldest continuing culture and First Nations people, deep and continuing connection for country, and hope that our work can benefit both people and country. So thank you very much. Okay, so standard housekeeping that we sort of run with all our forums. So just keep your mic muted when the presentations are going. Just to do on bandwidth, just to keep your cameras off. But look, please put your camera on if you can when you're asking questions during QA. During any QA, look, quite welcome to use the chat. We'll keep an eye on that. And raise your hand. We'll try to make sure there's enough time for interaction. Look, if we don't get to your questions or queries, or you don't feel like you want to ask in the forum, just come back to us later and we'll see if we can close off your query as well. Okay. So moving along. So yeah, we've got a great agenda today. This is pretty much the what we put out before. It hasn't changed. Some fairly important updates and a little bit of Q&A and other business at the end, and Kate Ryan will join us for that part of the session as well. So based on that, we will just move on to our first presentation this morning from Michael Dalton, who heads up our WA Operation Planning and Forecasting team for a power system update. So over to you, Michael.
Good morning, everyone. Can you see the slides? Just a quick check.
Yep, we can see them. Thank you.
All right, great. I'll just changed. I probably don't need to change to a little red dot. So good morning. My name's Michael Dalton. I'm the manager of the WA Operational Planning and Forecasting team. Today, I'm going to give an update, a power system update with a focus on a facility that's going into semi-retirement, so Muja G6. So what I'll be going through is the history of Muja, just a quick overview of this facility that's been in the system for quite a long time, some of the announcements and ministerial directions that have been made public, the reserve outage mode, the operating protocol that Synergy and AEMO will operate this facility under reserve outage mode, and an outlook for the power system going through to the end of summer with the information we've currently got at hand. And apologies if my voice breaks up, I've got a bit of a sore throat today, so just bear with me. Okay, so Muja, if you don't know about it, it was one of the largest power stations in WA, powering the Swiss for, how long was it for? About as old as I am? I don't know, about 40 years. So it's played a vital role in Western Australia's energy supply for many decades, and there's probably been hundreds of people that have worked on the site, not only during the commissioning and construction, but also during its operation over those past 40 to 50 years. So it started off with stage A and B. These were smaller units for 60 megawatt units. Then later on, we had commissioning of stage C, which were Muja 5 and 6. 5 retired a couple of years ago. And stage D, which was commissioned in 1985, which is the 2 remaining facilities that aren't scheduled for retirement just yet. Synergy's provided us with some nice photos of the facility. This is when it was being constructed. You can see it's a bit hard to tell the scale, but I'm pretty sure that shed's quite big. These are some more recent photos. There's a switch yard, which I'm sure a lot of Western Power people would be familiar with, and just some shots of the power station as it exists today in the turbine room there. So I guess the reason why we're talking about Muja G6 is that the state has a commitment to decarbonise, which requires a shift in Muja's role. So as the industry moves towards a greener future, these coal facilities will be replaced with a mix of renewable and mainly battery energy storage systems, or BESS. And this really sort of emphasises the importance of managing the transition away from coal-fired generation while maintaining grid stability. And some announcements that have been made, in particular to Muja G6, is firstly the ministerial direction for the facility to cease operation on the 1st of October. You might all be thinking, yes, well, that's only about a week away. So during our forecasting of requirements, if you've read some of our documents that we've published, you would have seen that there is a requirement for Muja G6 to be in what we've got here as the reserve outage mode to support operations through this year and into summer next year. And the reserve outage mode is there to provide a sort of a critical safety net for the Swiss during the transition to renewable energy sources. It ensures that reliable generation capacity is available to respond to unforeseen events and to maintain grid stability during periods of peak demand or reduced generation availability. So, yep, that's sort of what I went through. So the reserve outage mode makes sure that Muja is available. Muja 6 will be maintained in a state of readiness capable of startup for dispatch when we forecast those periods of tightness that I just talked about. AEMO and Synergy, in consultation with EPA, agreed to operate the facility under an operating protocol. It's not unusual for these to happen, but yeah, it's not a typical arrangement, but we do have these in the operations space. And the operating protocol just clearly defines the parameters to which the facility will be operated with close collaboration between AEMO and Synergy. So the operating protocol, Muja G6 will be remained in a state of readiness, but only dispatched as a last resort to ensure power system security. It's a strategic approach to help balance the needs for reliable backup generation with the transitions towards renewable sources, as I've said before. Trigger events for activation. AEMO will call upon Muja G6 in response to a predicted or actual reserve shortfall. And this could be either a high demand period like in summer, or a period of time where there are significant outages of other generations in the Swiss. Typically, this would be this season, so spring, where we've got around about 1,000 megawatts of scheduled generation on outages, and this is critical maintenance for summer. So a lot of generators go off now to perform maintenance, so they're ready for action when summer comes, because every unit's on then, and there's very small opportunity for generators to take long-term critical maintenance outages. Communications and coordination. There'll be effective communication between AEMO and Synergy. We do this every day anyway, but it will be paramount throughout the process. There'll be a bit more focus on how we actually will be activating this facility. This includes real-time operation decisions and proactive forecasting to anticipate potential system needs. Startup profiles. So if you've ever dealt with a coal-fired power station before, and if you go back to those pictures, it's quite a large facility. There's varying startup times. So there's cold, warm, and hot. I'll go through those a bit later, but they factor into AEMO's decision-making of when to call for it, trigger points, and what we can actually do with the facility in the reserve outage mode. And understanding these lead times is crucial for ensuring timely response to system contingencies. Outage and maintenance. The protocol outlines clear procedures for managing both forced and planned outages of Muja 6, which ensures minimal disruption to system security even during maintenance periods. If it is to be called upon, the Synergy and AEMO operating protocol will enliven Muja 6 network access rights under a non-reference service with Western Power. And once those network access rights are triggered, Synergy will offer Muja G6 into the WEM as any other generator with network access rights. Yes, I've just gone over that. So this is just a bit of a quick summary of what the startup profiles actually look like. So the key points here are you've got 3 different time horizons. So a hot start's up to 24 hours offline. It's the unit's quickest response time. It only takes 6 hours to synchronize to the grid, and it's ideal for short cycling, you would call it, or addressing short-term fluctuations whilst it's on. It's got a minimum runtime of 48 hours and a minimum off time of 6 hours. The other timeframes there, you've got warm start and cold start. You can see there that you've got different unit sync times. So it can take up to 12 hours to sync while it's warm. And if it's cold, then it will take 72 or longer, or a minimum of 72 hours to sync. It has to run for 48 hours. And that's just a limit on the physical limit of the facility. So why would I show you this startup profile? It sort of underscores the importance of the planning and coordination role in operating Muja G6. We need to keep these in mind, and they sort of are trigger points through our decision-making process. And I'll go through the different timeframes now of when we would ask for activation, just bearing in mind those different profiles that we just talked about. So medium to short term. So the medium term's 1 week out to 3 years, but we're only really going to consider this for the reserve outage mode, which is, I think, it's to the end of, or the start of April. In that time frame, we can see we've got forecasts of load and we've got forecasts of any outages. So if we were expecting a shortfall in the medium term, we would let the market know as soon as possible. We'd let Synergy know and coordinate with them on that one. Short term is more like the 7-day outlook. So 7 days in advance. One way to look at this is when we formulate our load forecasts, the closer it gets to real time, the more accurate they become, because we feed in weather data. So if you've ever looked at weather data, or you want to see the forecast for the weekend, you might look on Monday, see if you want to go over to Roto, whatever. You'll be informed of what the weather is, and you have a pretty good idea if it's going to be sunny or cloudy. That's not really able to be factored into the medium term forecast with as much certainty. So there's a lot of historical work that goes into medium term forecasting, but short term is informed by the weather forecast provided by different weather providers. And when we step into the real time frame, this is probably going to be the period which is the primary dispatch interval, which is right now to 48 hours out. And that's where AEMO would make decisions to either decommit the unit, short cycle if possible, or make some other operational decision, which can happen within that short time frame. As soon as AEMO is aware of the activation or deactivation, so synchronizing or desynchronizing the unit to the Swiss, market advisories will be issued to the market, so they're aware that Muja G6 is going to come in. What I'll go over now is a bit of an outlook for October and just some key takeaways for that. So what we're looking at with Muja in fairly healthy reserves. So this is the reserve margin that we use to calculate a variety of things, whether or not we're in lack of reserve conditions, as well as if you wanted to take an outage in the short-term window or the long-term window, we would assess an outage based on the reserve margin. Without Muja G6 in October, we can see that we're forecasting pretty much lack of reserve level 2 and lack of reserve level 1 for a fair portion of October. It sort of puts us at a bit of in a risky position. So there's if there is a trip of one of the largest units during periods of LOR2, there is the real risk of load shedding. And the loss of a generator or transmission element connected to a generator is a credible contingency that we use in our planning criteria and make our operational decisions on. AEMO is aware that there's a physical limitation on Muja G6 that during October we will be calling for it to be running for the whole October period until that physical limitation is removed, which will give us more certainty in having a reserve margin closer to the one on the top. So we're not really sitting for long periods with lack of reserve conditions or right on the border where we're putting ourselves at a heightened risk with having the credible contingency of a unit tripping off. Next, I'll talk about the summer outlook post October. We get an improved outlook. So you can see that the reserve margin's a lot healthier pretty much throughout the period, with some slight dips into LOR periods during February and March. So these periods here, there's typically no outages in the system, but we do have heat waves and high loads, and this is a long-term forecast. So this is pretty typical of what a summer looks like, but we're expecting some facilities that are currently under commissioning to be commissioned and supplementary reserve capacity contracts to be finalised October 1. So this should improve the outlook, but we don't count them towards the forward look ahead until they are finished commissioning and firmly secured, or the contracts are signed up. So that's it for me. Any questions or feedback from that?
All right, we've got one question from Wayne, and it's associated. The question is given, and I might be actually able to take this for you, Michael. Is that what compensation will Synergy receive from AEMO for keeping Muja C Unit 6 available on these times? So the way it effectively works is the Muja's bidding into the market. They'll be compensated as per the market rules. There's no special compensation in place from AEMO to Synergy in regards to this operation. All right, how are we going? Any other questions? Look, the it is a bit to take over this one. And we're doing this to ensure there's visibility of the market over the operating of this facility over October and also the summer period to just help transparency in the market. So if anybody's got any questions in relation to this post the forum, yeah, please reach out to us and we can give you a even further detailed explanation of some of the aspects that Michael went over. All right, so unless there's any other questions, quite happy if one of people put their hand up or ask. Otherwise, we'll move on to the capacity market investment update from Netika Kapani. So over to yourself, Netika.
Good morning, everyone. I will kick this off. If you can just move on to the next slide. There are a few procurement activities that are currently underway. The first one I'll talk about is the CRC process that most of you are aware of. We are going to conclude the certified reserve capacity process for the 24 reserve capacity cycle by the end of September. We assigned CRC to facilities on the 27th of August. I think it's prudent to note that the CRC is just a reflection of the physical or the technical capability of the facility in terms of what it can do in an unconstrained environment. And it is worthwhile to note that the CRC in itself does not guarantee capacity credits or associated payments. So network constraints are currently being taken into consideration as part of the network access model that is being run by the team. This happens usually following the assessment or the assignment of CRC. So we are currently determining those NAC quantities. Those will translate into capacity credits, and we will be publishing the NAC and capacity credits on the 30th of September. Assignments come with an obligation of the facilities to be available to meet their reserve capacity obligations by the 1st of October, and of course get paid in return for doing the same. The next process, the other process that is taking place in parallel is the supplementary capacity process for the upcoming summer for up to 285 megawatts of capacity. So AEMO did trigger this process in August. The tender submission window closed on the 5th of September, and we are currently in the throes of assessing those supplementary capacity responses that we've received. We're engaging with Western Power and proponents as part of that tender evaluation process, and the aim is to inform successful respondents in the week commencing 7th of October. As Michael has mentioned as well in his slide, what transpires or how much we get would all depend upon how many megawatts we sign up. And the idea is to have all contract discussions completed and contracts signed and ready to commence in time for the start of the hot season, which is 1st of December. A few activities that have been undertaken as part of the process included, firstly, a supplementary capacity information session prior to the tender process getting kicked off. Also included an APCWG meeting where an overview of the proposed amended procedure was presented. There was also consultation on the related supplementary capacity WEM procedure, with the amended WEM procedure commencing on the 10th of September. The next slide talks about some of the other activities that are underway in the team. We are also concluding the winter reserve capacity testing process, which will conclude the end of September. So AEMO is currently subjecting facilities to formal reserve capacity tests. These are facilities who have not demonstrated performance at their level of capacity credits via normal operations, or they have potentially failed a first test. The summer reserve capacity testing period commences on 1st of October, and I would really like to encourage participants to please self-test as soon as possible during the observation period, which concludes at the end of December. Reminders to this effect have been sent out to market participants holding capacity credits for the 24-25 capacity year. The rationale for that observation period to end in December is that it really takes time for metadata to come through. AEMO also needs to acknowledge the time it may take for facilities to be subjected to a second test should they fail the first test within the testing period. There's another process that's underway, and thank you to those participants who have actually submitted their consumption deviation applications, but the consumption deviation application closes on the 31st of October. So DSPs are encouraged to submit any CDAs they would like as soon as possible for their NIMIs. And if you do so, the relevant demand will be recalculated for the 24-25 capacity year if AEMO assesses and accepts the CDA for what it is. And last but not the least, we are actually providing support to AEMO Services Limited in implementing the capacity investment scheme in WA. This is just a slide with key dates pertaining to this tender process. The one to note is that the project bids closing date was on the 19th of August. Currently, the bids are being evaluated, but there is also an invitation to submit the financial value bid as part of stage B in September and October. 15 bids totaling 13,060 megawatt hours of storage have been received by the Commonwealth, and 2,502 megawatts of total capacity were received. There should be something in the chat box just providing you a link to the website where all of this information is available, and also contact details for the AEMO ASL who are leading this process. I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, I can't see any questions come up on this topic, or I can't see anybody who's raised their hand. So thank you very much for that overview, Nitika.
Thanks.
So I'll move on now to market updates from Nicholas Nelson. So Over to you, Nicholas. I did notice there's a question in the chat around minimum demand forecast, but we might pick that up at the end of the presentations if we have time. Okay. Over to
No
you.
problems. No problems. Thanks, Martin. I trust that you can hear me and see my screen. I'll take that as a yes. All right. Thanks, everyone. Good morning. In case there's any of you that haven't met me yet, my name is Nicholas. I manage the WA Prudentials and Settlements team here at AEMO. Today, what I'm going to do is give a bit of an overview of the market outcomes in the new market since market start back in October last year, and a quick comparison update of an old comparison, in fact, to the previous market that existed before then. But before I jump into that, if you'll permit me to be a little bit dramatic, I wanted to just mention a little quiet milestone that is occurring this week, and that is that today marks the issue of the last ever non-STEM invoices for the old balancing market. So the third adjustment for September 2023. So although we stopped operating that market almost a year ago now, it's really only this week that we finally see the final actions taken in respect to it. So the old balancing market operated for a little over 11 years up until last September, and I just thought it would be nice to take a quick moment to acknowledge all the hard work that went into that from a lot of people from a lot of different organizations over those years. But that's not the main point today, so let's jump into having a look at some of those market outcomes. So starting with the real-time energy price, so this is just the average monthly energy price over the last year. You can see that it's risen over the last couple of months, reaching $97.50 in August, which is pretty close to the highest monthly average for the year. And that looks to have been driven by reasonably high operational demand and causing an increase in frequency of energy prices clearing at the cap. And that's linked to tightness in the market, which is partly driven by facilities not committing when they're receiving those look-aheads, and also to some outages that are occurring at the moment. So that's the recent observations on the energy price. Looking now at FCAS enablement and uplift costs, I think the thing that stands out here mostly is the impact of the rule change that occurred on the 22nd of May. So on that day, a temporary cap of $500 per megawatt per hour was introduced on all FCAS market services. And you can see on this graph that has resulted in a fairly significant decrease in FCAS enablement costs, which is these colored sections, relative to the previous months. Now, it is worth noting that price cap will only impact the FCAS enablement costs, and it won't have any impact on the FCAS uplift costs, which are here in grey. And as you can see, the FCAS uplift costs for June were the highest of the year, peaking at about $34.4 million for the month, which has dropped off to about $19.2 million in August. Now, one of the major drivers for FCAS uplift costs, total FCAS uplift costs, is the energy price. The higher the energy price we see, the lower the uplift price per megawatt will be. So it's quite common to see an inverse relationship between energy prices and FCAS uplift costs, which helps to explain this observation. As you'll recall from the previous slide, June 2024, we had some of the lowest energy prices for the entire year, whereas in August, we've seen some of the highest. So that helps to explain those observations on the FCAS uplift costs. Before I move on, I will note that EPWA has been running a FCAS cost review, and which has proposed a number of changes to the FCAS markets in particular, and aimed at reducing some of those FCAS costs, particularly uplift costs. So if you're not across that, you might be interested in jumping onto EPWA's website and having a look at those proposed changes. Having a look at energy uplift costs, you will immediately notice that there is a big spike in January, February, and that was really driven by a very small number of very high demand days in January and February. I think in January, February, we exceeded the old maximum demand record, which had stood for several years. We exceeded that about 7 times from memory, and these these high energy uplift costs are largely linked to that small handful of days, which sort of makes sense because those are the days that we expect to see the highest network congestion, and those are the days that we would expect to see the highest energy uplift costs. Apart from those days, in those couple of months, we've seen relatively low energy uplift costs throughout the year, and we expect these to reduce slightly over the next few months as we are progressing some adjustments that are fixing some errors in some of those calculations. Next, we have a slide which is essentially an update of a slide that we presented nearly a year ago now, back in the November 2023 WAECF. So what we have here is a bit of a comparison between the new market since October last year and the old market. And what we've done is we've taken the total cost of each different market service and we've divided it by total consumption to kind of get a sense of how much does each of these market services cost per megawatt hour. That allows a slightly more fair comparison between different markets and also between ESS and energy. So I will note that these costs won't apply to all participants equally. Participants have different exposure to different market services, and some participants may not be exposed to some market services at all. However, this does give us a really good general overview. Now, starting with the new market, so this is 11 months up to the end of August this year worth of data. Back in November, we presented the same data just based on October. Comparing those two values, what we've seen is that the average energy and uplift costs have increased a little bit, while the ESS costs have decreased a little bit. So overall, comparing just the October data that we presented last year versus this 11 months worth of data is really a very, very small increase of about 55 cents to that total value of $106. So we haven't really seen an enormous overall change throughout the year. Comparing the two markets, the energy price in the new market is just a very little bit lower. It's essentially really quite similar. Where we have seen some increases really is to the total ESS costs, and that's really applicable across all of the FCAS market services. And the other area where we've seen a big increase is in uplift. Now, we've compared uplift here to constraint compensation. It's not a completely fair comparison because they're not exactly the same thing, but it is probably the most analogous thing in the new market compared to the old market. So that's the comparison with the old market. Now, jumping in and looking at similar sort of values on a monthly basis for the year, we've shared that on this slide. It's essentially the same data as presented in the previous slide, but presented in a slightly different way, and also adding in a couple of extra costs that weren't included on the previous slide. So here we've included reserve capacity, supplementary capacity, and a couple of other things. So pulling out just a couple of key observations here. Really, the reserve capacity cost is fairly consistent throughout the year at about $28 per megawatt hour. It varies up and down a little bit by maybe a couple of dollars, depending on how many refunds there are in the month, but generally it has remained fairly stable. The cost of supplementary capacity over the hot season was about $3 per megawatt hour on average over the period. And these other costs, I think it's just worth mentioning, that includes things like NCESS, energy uplift, and system restart service. You will notice that they are thickest in, or that portion is largest in January, February, and that's really driven by those energy uplift costs that we looked at earlier. Other than that, these costs and the variation in cost month to month tends to be mostly driven by energy, and you can see that especially in the last 3 months. So the total market cost has risen to about $150 per megawatt hour, having averaged around $139 per megawatt hour across the year. In August, it's come up to that $150 value. And again, that's mostly been driven by that increase in energy costs. A little bit of offset in decreasing FCAS enablement costs, but really the energy costs is the largest driver. Wrapping up now, I will just mention that we do try to present on some of this data more frequently and looking at some other interesting outcomes in the Real-Time Market Insights Forum. So if you're not already involved in that and you're interested in getting to know more, please contact WA Electricity Forum at aemo.com.au. That is it from me. Happy to have a look at a couple of questions. I can see that there's already one or two in the slides. So first question, slide shows a 20% increase in the dollars per megawatt hour of energy. If fees, NCAS and capacity were included in the comparison, what would the comparative figures be? Sorry, I'm not quite sure when that was, when that question was dropped in, but I think that I hope that this graph has sort of answered that question. In that it helps to show, you know, what the relative cost of NCAS is, which is to say relatively small, maybe around that sort of couple of dollars mark. Capacity is around $28, but that has remained fairly consistent throughout the year. So I hope that that answers that question. And the next question, what does AEMO expect the annual cost of NCAS to add to market costs for the next 3 years from 1 October 2024? Look, unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head. We can take that under that question on notice and see what we're able to share in future. Next question, how do these energy costs compare to the NEM? Is it more expensive to draw electricity in WA? Great question. Look, off the top of my head, I'm not too familiar with the energy costs in the NEM. I believe that typically what we see is that the simple average of the energy costs, the dollars per megawatt hour of the reference trading price in the WEM is a fair bit lower than what we see in the NEM. But there's obviously some quite significant differences between the designs of those markets, which means that that is not a perfectly fair comparison, right? Because we have the capacity costs, whereas that doesn't exist in the NEM. On the other side, the NEM has much higher price caps so that facilities that only run during the peaks can recover their costs for the year. That's part of the reason that we are trying to present costs in this way by factoring in the reserve capacity costs and trying to present them as a per megawatt hour cost. I think that if we look at the cost of energy plus fees plus reserve capacity, which is probably the most fair comparison to make against the NEM's pure energy cost, or actually we shouldn't include fees in that because the energy cost over there won't include fees. But if we look at energy plus reserve capacity and compare that to NEM energy prices, I think it's broadly fairly similar. However, I would have to go away and take a look at that in order to give you a very, very confident answer. Wayne, I can see you've asked, you've tried to clarify compared to the old market. I'm afraid I still don't quite follow. Maybe do you want to just jump on briefly and explain your question?
You have compared in the slide that you did have up only the period of the new market as opposed to this slide comparing the new and old market. If you were to add fees, NCAS, and capacity, as you've noted, you've left out here, what would have been the comparative costs between the old and new market? Yep.
Okay, good question. So I don't have the detailed numbers close at hand, but as I mentioned here, the average for this total across the year was around $139 per megawatt hour. If we look at that, that's about $33 above this. The reserve capacity price this year is a little higher than it was last year. So I think that if we included that for the old market, this gap would get probably a little bit wider, but probably not a lot wider. Maybe at the most a couple of dollars. This is look, this is somewhat an estimate based on from memory, but that would be the best answer that I can give you right now. As I noted, the cost of NCAS is for this year has not been that great. Like I said, I'm not sure exactly what the cost of NCAS is going to be next year. So I think that is probably what the result would be, that the gap between these two would increase by a very small amount, maybe a couple of dollars.
And the fees you referred to are the AEMO fees, market fees.
It's all of the fees. It's the AEMO fees, the regulator fees, and the coordinator fees.
And those doubled on the 1st of July. So
I don't remember the exact number, but yeah, something like that. They increased by in the order of $1 or $2.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Web. Could we produce slide 17 going back an extra year? I mean, it's certainly doable. We'll take that on notice, and we'll see if what we can produce. Thanks, Matthew.
Okay, it looks like you might have got to the end of the questions there. So thank you very much. Thanks very much for all the questions. For people who can't see the chat, also in relation to the energy comparison cost within there, we've dropped in a link to our the QED report, the quarterly energy dynamics report, which actually has quite a lot of information about how both sides of the country's electricity markets are going, and with a fair bit of narrative there as well. Quite welcome to have a look at that. Okay, so moving on to our next agenda item and slides. Just seem to have lost the slide pack at the moment, or is this off to you, Ishan?
Thanks, Martin.
Oh, here we go.
Yep, just checking if you can see my screen.
Yes, there we go. Okay, over to you for the presentation on the Rockoff Ride-Through Capability Accreditation Update. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Martin. Hi, everyone. This is Hassan, Power System Engineer in WA System Engineering team. Today, I'm touching on the level of evidence required for Rockoff Ride-Through Capability Accreditation and some clarifications based on the experience we've got so far. Okay, just with a background, as you can see here, a typical frequency profile following a contingency event starts with a rapid change in frequency profile right after the event, where the slope is referred to Rockoff. And AEMO's got an obligation to keep the Rockoff within a safe limit as per Appendix 13 of the REM rules. And to do so, AEMO ensures there is enough energy naturally stored in the rotating mass of the electrical machines in the switch, both coming from motors and synchronous generators, known as inertia. And actually, this is where Rockoff Control Service market comes into play. And to recover the cost related to this, some sort of uplift cost related to that, Rockoff Ride-Through Capability Accreditation is the newest stream in the new market, introduced for the first time. So one of the objectives of the Rockoff Ride-Through Capability Accreditation is to identify the range of Rockoff for which AEMO can be confident that there will or will not be any security issues. And paragraph 9 of the WEM procedure efficacy accreditation just outlines the requirements for this. The graph here actually shows the current figure related to Rockoff levels. And as you can see, the operational zone at the bottom is at the bottom of this figure is at 0.25 hertz over 500 milliseconds, which is the Rockoff safe limit as per WEM rules. If you want to talk about hertz per second unit, which is kind of common in industry as well, it is actually equal to 0.5 hertz per second, but sustained over 500 milliseconds. And also as per WEM rules and procedures, our procedure, the cost recovery limit is at 0.5 hertz over 500 milliseconds in this graph. Any facility with a capability below cost recovery limit is considered to be a Rockoff causer. So market participants are interested in demonstrating their capability to be above that limit to also get away from the related charges because of this. Just a quick guess that as of today, from successful Rockoff Ride-Through accreditations, So as you can see, this is quite noticeable that the majority of the accredited facilities above the cost recovery limits are coming from inverter-based facilities from the newer technology, and also those under 10 megawatt capacity. And we've got the detailed information in our website, which is publicly available. Okay, so let's talk about the accreditation pathways for Rock-off Right-through capability and the challenges involved. Well, when procedure FCAS accreditation outlines 3 pathways for accreditations. First one is demonstrating the ability of the facility to maintain continuous uninterrupted operation during a range of Rock-off events. Well, in lack of high Rock-off events, option 2 is relevant, where market participants are required to provide an engineering report demonstrating Rock-off Right-through capability for each component which are relative and which are sensitive to Rock-off. These 2 are actually the main streams for Rock-off Right-through capability accreditation. And in addition to these, there is a third stream as a registered GPS, which can be considered and speed up the accreditation process, providing the level of evidences used for registering GPS is kind of equivalent to pathway 1 and 2. Here's actually where we get most of the misconception in the industry in the next little while. So I'm trying to explain why the level of evidence for Rock-off Right-through capability and for accreditation purposes is or could be different to what we've got in GPS. But in general, keep that in mind that the accreditation generally could be above and beyond GPS requirements. But before getting to that answer, let me quickly go through some details of each pathway. For the first pathway, which is the real high Rock-off events in the Swiss, we are particularly looking for a high Rock-off events above the cost recovery limit. This is actually a bit difficult pathway right now because AEMO's obligation is to keep the Rock-off within a safe limit. So the challenge is it's very unlikely to observe a Rock-off even close to cost recovery limit. However, it's been observed that during islanding condition, a Rock-off following a contingency event during islanding condition, which is a very low inertia situation, the Rock-off has exceeded the cost recovery limit, and the performance of the facilities that they could successfully and reliably, continue to operate during such an event can be used as an evidence. Okay, the second pathway, in lack of the real events where ideally the performance of the whole facility can be demonstrated in a real event, the second pathway actually focuses on different equipment within the facility which are sensitive to Rock-off and requires market participants to provide engineering report covering every relevant component. AEMO publishes a guideline for Rock-off sensitive equipment within a facility, which the main items are gas and steam turbines, wind turbines, power electronics, and protection relays. And the type of supporting documents for each Rock-off sensitive equipment could be different to one another, but it generally includes the manufacturing data sheet or specification, which is pretty reliable, testing results, which is basically referring to type testing or factory testing, and could be computer modeling, and also similar design right-through demonstration across other jurisdictions, which I will talk about it later. And I guess the struggle here is each of these types of supporting evidence comes with a limitation. As an example, I'm going to talk about the limitations of the computer modeling in the next slide. Okay. Computer modeling, including power factory or PSCAP models, are very essential for power system studies and assessment, but they lack thermoacoustic interactions and mechanical component with it, especially when we're talking about synchronous generators. So if you look at a power factory model of a synchronous generator, most likely there is no clue of some mechanical parts like boilers, drums, and equations relating to steam pressure and things like that. And these are actually driving a runoff-related issues such as lean gas blowout phenomenon, leading to a facility to trip. And well, don't get me wrong, computer models are great for many aspects because we can verify them reliably through a validation process, which involves a whole bunch of on-site testing and tuning the model, but unfortunately for runoff specifically, it's not easy, and also it's very risky to test the facility for runoff. In addition to that, some protection relays are not incorporated into the models, computer models, meaning in reality, say an overfluxing relay could trip post-event, but the model could be still happy. Given the challenges existing in the model, AEMO is flexible and open to review any sort of evidences or supporting documents, which includes but not limited to relevant information from OEMs. I think OEMs are in a better position to comment and a right-through capability of their facility. Ideally, they should cover it in a specification and data sheet, which is very reputable source of information. But yeah, AEMO is happy to review any sort of information beyond this specification and data sheet as well. And the other one would be similar design right through evidences across other jurisdictions. For example, if a similar design wind turbine or steam turbine did the right through for a high runoff events in over the East or in US and Europe. So we are happy to look at the similarities and things like that to make the call. And it actually gives us some confidence that the facility can ride through at a certain level. Okay, and finally the last pathway as a registered GPS. And hopefully I can now answer to the original question, which is why the level of evidence for runoff ride-through capability can be different to GPS and accreditation. First of all, it's worth noting that the GPS assessment is mainly based on computer simulations, like in Power Factory and PSCAP. And as I said in the previous slides, modeling have some limitations when it comes to runoff capability. Because it really doesn't include those interactions important to runoff, and also sometimes the protection systems. So it's actually fair to say most of computer simulations, and also and accordingly, GPS assessment can only comment on the runoff capability of the facility electrically, which doesn't necessarily mean the facility can ride through a real high runoff event. Another key differences between GPS and accreditation for runoff would be the time duration over which the runoff is sustained. The relevant clauses for minimum and ideal GPS respectively refer to the runoff ride-through capability over 250 milliseconds and 1 second. However, runoff safe limit, runoff cost recovery limit, and even the accreditation, that the level of ride-through capability for accreditation are all based on 500 millisecond window, which is somewhere between minimum and ideal requirements of the GPS. And as we know, the runoff withstand capability diminishes as sustained period increases, and it's not linear. So it's not really apple-to-apple comparison when we look at the GPS requirements or evidences to make the decision on the capability over 500 milliseconds. And actually, as a side note, the difference in time window is also important when it comes to operation of anti-islanding relays. For example, a if a relay operates within 250 milliseconds for anti-aliasing purposes, it's not perfectly aligned with 500 milliseconds window concept. And for example, as a frequency and Rokov, for example, if that relay just operates within 250 milliseconds, and then the frequency and Rokov could recover in the following 250 milliseconds, and the AEMO would require those facility accredited to continue operating reliably, but they would have tripped because of the shorter time period. So this is something we need to look at when we're going through the Rokov write-through capability accreditation, and these are the things that are pretty important in terms of comparing the GPS requirements and also the accreditation. Yep, I think that's me, and happy to take questions.
We've got one query from Oscar. So if you'd like to go off mute, Oscar, and ask your question, you're more than welcome.
Thanks, Hassan. Thanks, Martin. Look, I think you would have heard me say this before, but I just note these comments probably haven't been made public in forum, so I thought it's worth just saying it in public. But I think our view is just that these standards are just extremely high. We've found it almost impossible to find events in other jurisdictions where we've had Rokov of this magnitude, and then where we've still found challenges. And also the engineering reports that refer to the mechanical parts of the power stations. In our experience, we've got some of the most prolific OEMs that we've kind of been going to for our power stations, with power stations all around the world, and they just don't exist either for new facilities as well. There's just nothing that we can find that can be provided. So look, we'll maybe put something together more formally, but I think if this approach is maintained for new power stations, I think we're just going to see quite a perverse outcome. Like this Rokov market was meant to incentivize synchronous generators to come online and provide the service to avoid system security risk. But what we're finding is the opposite, really. These synchronous generators are the ones that are paying some of the highest Rokov costs to be there. So yeah, my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, that's a really good point. Well, I think the issue is, most of those legacies are manufactured and designed where the Rokov issue wasn't a thing, and it's hard to come back and make a comment on the Rokov capability of those facilities, even from OEMs, which, well, in those situations, we probably, the best bet is just to reach out to OEMs to see because I think they're in a better position to make a comment on the capability of the facilities. But yeah, I understand this is pretty hard for those facilities. Yep. And also, I can see a question in the chat. Can you please explain why there's only one synchronous generator accredited for Rokov write-through when synchronous generators are ones providing Rokov services? Yep, cool. So Rokov control services are really the inertia. So it's the rotating mass. So it could come from the rotating mass. So any rotating mass can provide Rokov control service, right? And which is inertia. But when it comes to wild deviations of the frequency, which causes Rokov, even those facilities, due to some mechanical limitations, and as I said, let's say boilers and drums and steam pressures, so they're quite sensitive to those deviations, and they can trip. So there is a limit for those. There is a Rokov capability level for those facilities that they can tolerate that. Yes, but in general, there are two different things. once they just start rotating and get connected to the grid, they're providing that energy no matter what, naturally. But yeah, there's a limit that they can tolerate that frequency deviations, which we are translating it to rock-off.
Okay, I can't see any more hands up or questions in the chat. Okay, I think, oh no, we do. I think we have one person, Paul Jones. Welcome to come off mute and ask your query.
Yep, g'day. Sorry, I don't seem to have a message in the chat. But Ehsan, this is fairly similar to Oscar's comments before, where I know we've had this chat, but just thought it'd be good to put it in the public forum. Given that rock-off ride-through accreditation largely avoids the charge, and that's the reason for being accredited, if FGES costs are zero and uplift payments are removed, what is the kind of near-term practical, I guess, reason for even being accredited? And kind of is there a view on where that's going?
Yeah, okay. So yeah, you're right. With the price cap of zero for rock-off control service, there's no direct cost for rock-off ride-through capability accreditations, but I understand, yeah, the uplift payment is a driver for the market participants to get accredited for. But probably I'm not the best person in the audience right now to make a comment on that. But I think there should be a change to proposal to the uplift payment calculation, as if someone's
I think Jenny's put a hand up. I'm not sure if she wants to jump in with a question or jump in with a response to that one.
Yeah, probably Jen is yeah, and yeah, as aware of the changes for uplift. Yep. Go on, Jen.
I just wanted to say that, and as we mentioned in the TDOG, the changes that we're making for FCAS uplift around rock-off are short-term changes that we can get in the time frame, and that there'll be ongoing review. One of the impacts of those changes is, and Paul is right, that what if someone is constrained on to provide rock-off control service, that will be an energy uplift payment, which won't go to the traditional rock-off causes. That is quite likely to change in future when there's more time to do that. So I wouldn't abandon the whole concept of needing the ride-through accreditation quite yet.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I can see there's a sort of a bit of discussion in the chat in relation to the evidence required for this. So maybe this might be a topic that we'll have to do a bit more of a deep dive. It might be more relevant in maybe in the RIF. But let's take that as action on AEMO to go away and we'll have a look at this in a bit more detail. And this is asked a question: has anybody done a cost benefit analysis on the rock-off accreditation? And I think we might just put that in the same bucket. I mean, that's not something that AEMO undertakes, but we can have a look into that aspect as well. Okay, so if everybody's okay with that approach, we'll take that little thread away, and we'll consider how we can come back in a more wholesome manner on that one. Last calls. Okay, no problems. Thank you very much for the presentation there. And now we're just switching gears over to our review of our capital program and what the overview of the work program is for financial year 25. And I'd like to welcome Andrew Smith, who people should be aware of his prior roles, to give us the presentation. Okay, thanks very much, Andrew.
Thanks, Martin, and morning, everyone. So when reform done, but there is an ongoing, reasonably large program of work that we expect to run over a number of years. So we thought it would be useful to give this forum an overview of what that program looks like, what's in it, why we're doing those things. And this is probably a precursor to probably more in-depth conversations about future years and the priorities of the work program within those. But at the highest level, we're proposing for FY25 a program of work that totals around $32.5 million. And that's split across two of AEMO's corporate priorities. The corporate priorities are in the corporate plan, which you can see on AEMO's website, of which there are 4. But our capital program is really focused on the first 2 of those, which are operating today's systems and markets and navigating the energy future. So we have about 40% of our investment allocated against that first objective, which is mainly providing the capabilities to our control room and to the people who operate the market to make sure that that remains fit for purpose. We can respond to the things that don't quite work, provide them with the tools and capabilities that they need as the power system and the markets get more complex over time. And the second part of that is to ensure that the digital systems remain fit for purpose. So we're keeping things up to date, secure, with sufficient capacity and so forth, that they continue to be reliable and secure. The other 60% of the investment is on navigating the energy future. And the largest component of that is on the reserve capacity mechanism. So that's implementing the first initiatives within the reserve capacity review. And the second largest part of that is starting to progress the design and build the capabilities to enable participation of DER at scale. There are also a number of small things that are emerging. The FCAS review is an example of that, where we need to change systems or change processes to respond to things that are not working as well as we might hope, or to late emerging problems. So we have $2 million allocated to deal with those kinds of things over the next financial year. So if we can jump to the next slide, please, Laura, thank you. So we've split that work up into 6 programs. As I say, the WA operations program, that has 4 projects within it. Currently, 3 of those are capital. 1 of those is just keeping a watching brief, if you like, and enabling AEMO to do the necessary testing for Western Power's energy management system changes. So to make sure that we continue to be able to operate the power system as Western Power makes their changes. The digital program, we have 3 projects within there that are effectively systems maintenance, so upgrading versions of things to make sure that they remain current. But we're also looking at the metering system and starting the groundwork to make that 5-minute capable in anticipation of DER and RCM, and possibly at some future date, 5-minute settlement needing a 5-minute capable metering system. The RCM review program, as I say, that's predominantly progressing the initiatives within the RCM review, the biggest one of which is flexible capacity certification. So we will be spending $9 million this year to have that ready for the next RCM cycle. DER program, there is a little bit of work remaining on the back of the existing program out of Project Symphony to create that transitional exchange for DER data. We've got some cybersecurity work to do on that. But then we start to focus on creating visibility of DER so that the control systems can know what DER is in the system and what it might do so that we can plan and forecast better, and starting work on Project Jupiter, which is the collaboration between Western Power, Synergy, EPWA and AEMO to start to explore how we can scale up DER. We then have a future systems program, which is not capital. This is building the capabilities, if you like, to for the future, for the power system of the future. So supporting Project Eagle, the building a capability to do better power system modeling. That's the capability that underpins the ESU. We currently outsource that, but we're going to bring that in-house so that we can do that more often and at a more granular level. And the Swiss roadmap, which is really the engineering roadmap for how we can operate a power system with ever increasing penetration of variable generation. And then, as I say, the emerging reform program, which is the small things that we will decide need to be done urgently within this financial year. So that's $32.5 million for this year. About 2/3 of that is now in execution. The remainder is in the feasibility or planning stage. We expect that future years will probably have a similar level of expenditure, but the intention is to bring that to industry as a proposed portfolio of work over a multi-year period to seek consultation. And I think Sarah in the next presentation is going to talk a little more about the process that we might follow to do that. So I might stop there unless there are any questions. Question from
Oscar's. I was going to say there actually, I think Oscar's got a query up. So
Oscar's got his hand up.
Welcome to come and ask.
Hi, Oscar.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks for that. Just a question on the RCM reforms. Sounds like there's a lot of work involved in that flexible capacity certification. And at another forum, I think it was a TDOG, it was kind of noting that that was really pushing some of the other RCM reforms as well, including the relevant level method. My question is it possible to allay some of that flexible capacity work now that it's kind of appears that that issue might be covered for quite a few years to come, and make sure that it doesn't delay things like the relevant level method? And if you have any update on when that RLM is coming in place too, that would be appreciated. I think at the last forum it was proposed to be pushed out to 2030, but yeah, we've just got quite big concerns about that because there's a lot of wind farms where we need a lot of wind, and it's pretty critical that comes in to shore up those business cases so they can come in as soon as possible. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Oscar. And I think it's well understood that the industry would really like RLM to be a higher priority. So we are going to do the work this year to actually develop the algorithm so that we know how we're going to do it. And I think it's a live conversation on the prioritization of those RCM capabilities and what needs to happen this year. So I think your point is well understood. It's a live conversation.
Thanks, Andrew.
I can see in the chat there's a question from Rihanna about the flexible capacity certification. Is that solely to allow it to be certified? That is my understanding. Operationalization of that is in future years. So when we actually procure the flexible capacity is in future years. That's a smaller amount of money. And Rhiannon, to the earlier conversation with Oscar about priorities, it may be that we delay actually doing that work until it's required. I can see as well there's a question from Jenny. Is there more detail available on what each of the line items entails? We can certainly provide that, Jenny. Yeah, we do have quite a bit of detail, so I can provide that with you offline if you like.
Okay, and I think we've got a query from Laura as well, so quite welcome to jump in and ask.
Hi, Laura Cosio from Energy Policy WA. I just wanted to say, sorry, bit of sore throat. Just wanted to say in response to Oscar's question that APWA is currently working closely with AEMO to look for options how to bring the RLM forward. So we've heard the comments at the TDOG, and yeah, where AEMO and APWA we're doing our best.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, I think that's it. I can't see more questions. I can might as well okay, last dibs. Okay, nobody's asking more questions, that's fine. So let's move on. Thank you very much, Andrew, and we'll move on to the AEMO's allowable revenue framework, and it's over to Sarah to give us an update of where that's at. So
thanks, Martin.
It's all yours.
Is my screen displaying okay? Oh, can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we
all
can
good,
hear.
Sarah. Oh, cool. All right, thanks, Martin. Hi, everyone. So today I'm just going to give a... Sorry, has my mic... Is it still working?
Yeah, all good.
Okay,
all good.
sorry, I'm having weird feedback. All right, let's start again. So today I'm just going to give a very quick overview of the case for changing AEMO's allowable revenue framework and also the rule change proposals that we have now submitted to the Coordinator of Energy. All right, but first of all, what are the problems with the current framework? Why does it need to change? So currently, AEMO is required to provide an allowable revenue submission to the ERA every 3 years. These submissions require a really high level of detail and certainty for the ERA to make adequate assessments. With the rapid pace of the energy transition, and as I'm sure you're all aware, the extent of recent reforms, it's been very difficult for AEMO to predict costs 3 years in advance with a high degree of certainty. Basically, this in turn has made it very difficult for the ERA to accurately assess the efficiency and prudency of AEMO's costs. With the large number of reforms as well, and AEMO's role in implementing the government's reform agenda, this has essentially led to the need for yearly in-period submissions. And essentially, the implications of all of this is that the framework is no longer fit for purpose. It's led to high administrative burden and cost for AEMO and the ERA, and also for market participants who provide submissions. There's limited visibility of forward-looking costs, insufficient certainty of market fees for participants, and basically it's led to the need to think of how we can change it. So AEMO's really considered a full spectrum of options in looking at potential solutions. Obviously, at the moment, we're in the full regulation sphere. We looked at the other end with more light touch regulation and reliance on market forces. In the end, we've landed around option C, which is doesn't go as far as full regulation, but still has some key elements of consultation, transparency, and external oversight. So basically expanding on the design principles that would underpin option C. I won't go into a lot of detail now, I don't have a lot of time, but we've carried over the principle of prudency and efficiency from the current framework. Transparency will be absolutely essential for market participants and key stakeholders to have visibility around forward-looking priorities, expenditure and fees. Engagement in particular will be crucial to help manage the energy transition and to give market participants the opportunity to provide input. And then the other key design principles of certainty, flexibility, timeliness, simplicity, and oversight. So essentially, AEMO, in looking at the options and coming up with the design principles, we took these to the Market Advisory Committee and later with a draft proposed rule change for their consideration. Based on their feedback, which was really great, we have settled on a proposed design that has 4 key principles or design elements. So the first is that we would be moving to an annual priority and budget and fee setting process away from the 3-yearly budget and fee setting process. At its core, AEMO would be required to really meaningfully consult with stakeholders throughout the calendar year in numerous points, and would be required to publish more transparently a larger degree of information for stakeholders to look at and properly engage with this process. And overall, this budget and fee setting process would be governed by our established internal and external governance processes, which includes financial governance and also the role of AEMO's board. The second element of our proposed design includes a new concept of major projects. So major projects will essentially be those really key large government energy reforms or major changes to AEMO's systems. There'll be a proposed framework under the rules, but essentially AEMO would be required to provide additional information on these major projects and engage and consult with stakeholders throughout their life cycle. AEMO proposes that this is done through a MAC working group, so a MAC Major Projects Working Group, which the MAC has given the okay to establish. The terms of reference is currently being created for this working group. And essentially, essentially this will enable stakeholders to provide proper input into these projects as they progress. The third key element of the design is a large degree of transparency around AEMO's performance. So as is currently the case, we'd be required to publish annual reports on AEMO's financial performance against this budget, but also look at doing this for other key operational measures around the same time. Fourth and a very important point is retaining external oversight over AEMO's budget and fees process. So, we propose that this could be done through monitoring and reporting by the Coordinator of Energy as part of the 3-yearly WAEM effectiveness review. But it's important to note that really this is a proposed design. This has now made its way into a WAEM and a GSI rule change proposal. But of course, stakeholders will have the opportunity to submit on the design, and the coordinator will be assessing this as well. So I've only given obviously a very high-level overview of the process to date, but AEMO has now formally submitted the GSI and WAEM rule change proposals. When they are published alongside a notice by the coordinator, stakeholders will have opportunity to look in detail at some of the design elements and the rationale for the change. The Coordinator of Energy is currently considering this, and the next step will be for them to publish the notice. If the coordinator decides to progress with the proposal, it will be published for consultation, and stakeholders will have 30 business days to provide a submission, I believe. So this slide obviously gives next steps for a couple of different processes, and happy to take questions on any element of it. But yeah, the key point today is to highlight to stakeholders that this is the current situation, and please reach out to us if you have any questions or want any further information. Look out for notice by the Coordinator of Energy on the EPWA website. Okay, thanks, Martin.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's look at any questions in relation to this, and I imagine they'll all be covered in quite a lot of detail in the relevant working groups. Okay, so thank you very much. Okay, so just moving on to Q&A and other business. There was a query, I think early on in the presentations around updated forecasts for minimum demand for October, November. So in relation to that, the best reference in terms of that forecast is still most recent WAECF. We do obviously refine the forecast as we get closer, but that's from a high level view, and you're talking about 2 to 3 months out. That's the best source of information at the moment. We are starting to get some quite low or minimum demand days. Saturday and Sunday last weekend was quite low, though we had plenty of reserve to handle it going further to cater for any unexpected contingency on the power system. And that's correct, Brad. We are getting quite low days also during the week, which is quite interesting as well. Okay, so in a general Q&A, is there any other sort of questions? Otherwise, unfortunately, Kate Ryan was going to join us for the very last part of the WAECF, but we've actually run way ahead of schedule, so unfortunately she hasn't been able to join us yet. For those who aren't aware, Kate Ryan's actually going to be leaving AEMO very shortly, in the end of this week. And the arrangement is we're going to have an interim executive general manager at WA, and it's a very seasoned professional, Nicola Falcon, and I'm sure that she'll be spending some time contacting and introducing herself to stakeholders while we actually go through a process of filling that position on a more longer basis. I think some of the notice come out, but so the industry is aware of that. Certainly, I'd like to express my thanks for the work that Kate has done over the last 2.5 years that she's been at AEMO and managed to some very tight system conditions and shepherd when reform through into production, and also managed to shore up a lot of capacity that we needed. And Kate also wishes to pass her thanks along to the industry and the support that she's been given into the role over the last 2.5 years. And I'm sure we're going to see Kate again in the WA energy transition. So I'd like to express my thanks for her leadership over the period and wish her all the best for the future. So, look, doesn't look like there's any other questions or other business raised. So we have a slide up of what the next forums that we're running coming up. So we have the Procedure Change Working Group. We've got the Gas Consultative Forum as well, and Real-Time Market Insights Forum. And I think the Real-Time Markets Insights Forum, we're actually hoping to do that in person. That's been running for quite some time, and it'd be nice to actually get everybody together and actually just to see people one-on-one as such, rather than over Teams. Have a strategic forum, electricity consultative forum again just before Christmas, and we also have a DR participation forum coming up as well. So quite a lot of industry engagement. People are welcome to attend any of those events. Okay, well that's great. I can't see any questions. I'd like to thank everybody again for attending today's session. Please reach out if you'd like to have any more details. If there's any topics you'd like to have us to cover in future forums, also please contact us as well. We really want to make this as useful as possible for market participants. And with that, thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, bye.